Nation. Thank you for joining us today. We had such a beautiful response from last week's episode with Brother Tracy that, as promised, we brought him back. Brother Tracy, welcome back.
Oh, wow. It's good to be back, and thank you for inviting me back. And as you mentioned, I myself also have heard a lot of positive feedback from people in the community about a sip of conversation. So kudos to you all who have stepped out in a mighty way to get more information out to our community.
And who do we have here?
Oh, this is this is someone that as we talked about the Africa trip last on the last podcast. We mentioned that we'll be coming back as you all invited us to talk about that trip, and I didn't just want to own that for myself. We have with us today the oldest person, young man that was on the trip. He was 18 years old back in 2008 when we went to Egypt as well as Ghana. So his name is Brother Tamark Abrams, and it's just an honor, to see him now, grown man with a wife and children, and so now he could tell the gravity that I had back then because he got his children of his own now.
That's true.
So thank you, Tamark, for coming. So.
Okay. Brother, for those who may have missed the show, can you tell us a little bit about your organization?
Yes, Supreme Leadership Youth Academy is an organization, nonprofit organization that I founded back in 2006. Our slogan is preparing our youth for global affairs. Our training components consist of leadership development, manhood training, conflict resolution, computer and financial literacy. The trip to Africa was called Project Youth to Africa because we believe that our youth are due a culture and education, a journey to Africa to help reconnect past lost cultural traditions to help make better present life choices. So that was not a part of the program. It was a project, but it was a very important part, a project that's a part of Supreme Leadership Youth Academy.
Okay. So, to Mark, what profession are you in currently?
I practice as a physical therapist. So I'm doing home health. That's the setting currently. So I'm actually all around the Metro Birmingham area and Shelby County as well.
Okay. Okay. So, how long have you been doing that?
Let's see, ever since 2015, so about 7 years or so.
2015. Okay. Good. What led you into physical therapy?
We always get that question. Well, I guess long story short, the first time I was really exposed to physical therapy is following actually, I guess, tragedy essentially. My dad was in a real bad automobile accident. Um, I mean, he's actually lucky to be alive to this day, but he had to go through pretty extensive rehab. And since I was a youngin, and probably for the most part, the only child that's still in the house, I was kind of a part of kind of helping him with his rehab. And that's kind of my first exposure to physical therapy as a whole. I always knew I wanted to go into healthcare. I think the default was always, I wanted to just go to med school. But, when I went to UAB for undergrad, I just wanted to try to figure it out, kind of cruised along undergrad, just kind of really trying to find that, I guess, realm in healthcare that, stuck out to me the most. That's kind of when I revisited, physical therapy as well. Just kind of did some observation, shadowing, and, just been around several different physical therapists and just kind of seeing, the pros, the cons, the good, the bad, essentially, and just kind of determine exactly what I want to do. And, I fell in love with the profession, so I just kind of pursued it from there, essentially.
Okay. Okay. So, how did you get connected with Brother Tracy with the Supreme Youth Leadership?
So I met Brother Tracy through my father. They're both members of the Nation of Islam. So
Okay.
my father, as you know, is Brother Tarzine. So I don't know how long they've probably known each other for years. So I mean, I've been knowing him, by proxy for years essentially before he started the academy. Then I think he might have maybe reached out to my father initially, and just kind of talked to him about the program and some of his mission and his goals, and it was kind of a no brainer essentially. As far as when my dad offered to me as far as that's something I'm interested in, so we just kind of, kind of clicked up with that and kind of went with that.
Oh wow. I can imagine that you have some awesome parents to that allowed you to
Yes,
have this
yes.
wonderful experience.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm a little biased, but of course, I mean, my parents always want what's best for me. He saw that, the vision that Brother Tracy had. He's like-minded, like my father. Wants to, help out our youth. I mean, at the time, I was probably 16 or so, somewhere around there when, I think we initially started. So I think it was a good experience overall. So I'm glad it kind of worked out.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. So, at the age of 18, were you 18 when you went?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what was your views on the trip then versus now?
I think initially it was just, that was probably the first time. I don't even know if Brother Tracy knew, but that might have been the first time I actually flown. Period.
Oh wow.
So I mean, from local flights, from Atlanta to New York was probably my first flight. Period. So just the travel aspect of it. I'm used to used to long car drives from say
But this was definitely a different one.
Initially it was just the excitement of just travel in general, or traveling by plane. And then, especially the biggest thing, going to a different continent, in Africa, no letter. So that was an amazing experience. Just kind of looking forward to it. Just to experience several things. You hear about culture, you see culture in books, and just to get a chance to experience something, was exciting initially. And I guess fast forward to today, it's still a big impact to me. It's something I talk to my wife about. That sometimes we definitely want to go back, maybe probably several times, and just try to, bring in as much of that culture as possible. So now it's, that's kind of left a lasting impact that, I've experienced a lot of those things that you may read about or hear about. So
Right. Okay. How long did it take y'all to get there? I'm just curious. I've always been curious.
Well, it was about a 2-hour flight from Atlanta to New York. But from New York to Egypt, it was a 9-hour flight in the air.
Wow.
yeah.
Houston, we can't have no problems. So, but it was a very big plane, bigger than the typical planes we would travel in. I think it was 3 or 4 to a seat.
Yeah,
It was
something
more
pretty
than
big.
typical,
Yeah.
but it was a huge plane. It was Air Egypt. Actually, it was Air Egypt that we flew on from New York to Egypt, and from Egypt to Ghana. I think it might have been 3 or 4 hours when we traveled from there. That was. I didn't know that was your first flight.
Yeah.
Let me say something. That's the first time I ever had 6 people's children in my care.
Yeah.
No, that's right.
And taking them to Atlanta would have been a lot, but just around the world. And I thank God for the parents who are listening, in particular for entrusting me with your children. Probably one of the most humblingest experiences for anybody when people put their children in your care. So to be honest, again,
Yes.
I really didn't relax till we got back to Birmingham. I was very, very security minded, of course, but I didn't want anything negative to happen to the parents who entrusted me with their children. So to God be the glory,
No, that's right.
but just to hear to Mark, testify at the age of 30.
32 now.
32.
Yeah.
He's right at the frozen level. No, I'm just joking. No, he's thawed out now.
Yeah.
But to hear his testimony, it was very powerful for me to hear. Oftentimes, you do a work, but you never see the fruits of your labor.
Right.
And we don't never know. We just be obedient to God. And the vision that he gave me, I was obedient to him with a lot of opposition. I won't digress, but it was not easy financially. To raise the money was one thing, but some of the necessary obstacles, because God allowed them to happen. But it made it more sweeter because we didn't stop. And I have to say the video that will be shown on this podcast for the first time publicly. Those some remember that my family we had a house fire, and thank God that the DVD that we had was not in the house; it was in my car. And so, what you see from the video, it may not be the best quality, maybe a little vintage. It's pretty clear, but it was
Okay.
very good to have that treasure because now throughout the last month or two, I've been in a school talking about the trip, and we actually showed them the video, see, privately, but now it will go public, and they have been blown away, and they will be getting a test. I ain't gonna show. They'll be getting a test on this trip next week. So God evolved it because these children may not never go, but they're gonna have the same information that they got, and maybe God willing they will go, but they're gonna be educated about who they are and their roots, So yes.
Okay. Is that the reason? Is that one of the reasons why you chose Africa?
Well, emphatically yes. One of our tour guides who helped facilitate the journey was Brother Akbar Muhammad,
Okay.
who is the international representative of the Nation of Islam and the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. I don't think I would have had the mind or maybe the will to go if it wasn't for someone like him that had already been there, done it many times. So he was like the comforter that God gave me to go forth with the trip. So a lot of us as blacks in America, we have been cut off from our roots, our knowledge of who we are.
Absolutely.
And that was by design. And some of the vestiges of slavery, some of the devious, inadvertently behavior, some of the crime is connected to not knowing who we really are. So sure, that's why I said we believe our children and really adults are due an educational journey to Africa to help reconnect past lost culture traditions to present life choices. So what we are about to do is produce a curriculum that will be presented to children as well as adults, those who want to take these classes. So they will have the knowledge of Imhotep, the first builder of the 6-step pyramids,
Okay.
who is also known as the father of medicine. Now, he's really known as the god of medicine, and he's a black man. And when we went into the museum, Imhotep Museum, there were instruments that he used when he did surgeries thousands of years ago. So those are the type things that people will actually learn from this curriculum. And they also will learn that, Egypt, his name Egypt, it was named Kemet.
Kemet?
Kemet,
I didn't know that.
which means the land of the dark or burnt skinned people. So that's see there you said
I did not know that.
So yes, but that is what we got to experience, and a whole lot more. But this will be a curriculum that will be presented to the public, and with technology right now, we can have classes. We can actually teach the people in Africa that don't know about things in Africa.
Right. Yeah, because they didn't just stop here. They went all over to make sure.
Yes, ma'am.
So I got one more question for you.
Sure.
What was your best experience in Africa?
It's hard to really just say it was one overall thing. I think the most impactful probably, if I combine it when back when I was 18 to now, is probably experiencing the pyramids in Giza. That was probably it's always kind of one of those wonders of the world. And when you get there, you realize, because you really wonder how it got there. I don't know the exact metrics, but the weight and the magnitude. I mean, when I see the pyramids, I think, I mean, they're tall, but I didn't realize each block was probably, about my height.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's kind of
Tons.
hard to really, put it in perspective. I mean, I don't. I mean, I thought, I think they were gonna be short blocks to kind of lit
Yeah,
up,
me
but they're
too.
literally, almost eye level when once you walk up to them, and I mean, they're solid. Like, as hard as you can,
I,
it doesn't seem. It look, as a kid, I was thinking, maybe it's just really hard sand or something like that, and
Right.
not nearly as big, but just to really experience that was probably the biggest take home as far as something I knew about going into, or at least I thought I knew about going into, and then experiencing it and just kind of the lasting impact. That's probably it's probably the one that kind of stands out, the most. But I mean, it's a number of different things, both in Egypt and Ghana that really stood out. I mean, from simple things from like in Ghana, I still remember to this day it's probably the sweetest pineapples I ever eaten. And you never
Wow.
hear about Ghanaian pineapples or anything like that. But I mean that's still to the day. I mean I've had sweet pineapples other places, and I mean it's probably the best I've ever
Nothing
had.
compares to it.
So I mean I would think of finding ways I can ship in pineapples from
no, we
Ghana.
got to find where we can do some business with
Yeah,
them today.
yeah, and I mean that too. I mean, even just seeing some of the handcrafted,
Oh, yeah.
artwork that they made in Ghana. I mean, they literally had like this. I was kind of blown away as far as this. It's kind of a big. I don't know what it was called, like a trade, kind of like a flea. It was kind of like a flea market light setup where everyone just bring handcrafted things that they made. And the biggest thing apparently in that culture, they liked bargaining. So
Okay.
negotiating those kind of things is part of their culture. So tour guides was telling us going into it, and it might have been Brother Akbar who told us. He
Right,
was just
right.
saying, hey, that's part of their culture. So whatever the price is, they will like the back and forth. That's part of it. And I mean, you would see some of the stuff, and if you didn't know that going into it, you'd overpay for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, so some of that stuff you wouldn't mind because I mean it's
Right.
priceless if you were to bring some of those stuff back to the U.S. But I mean, just to see what people would do, in their hands and just that type craft and those kind of things. So I mean, like, it was an endless amount of things if I really sit back and think about everything, in perspective. I mean, it was a lot really. But I guess the easier one that most people can identify with would probably be the pyramids of Giza.
Absolutely,
What-
because the way that they had, the way that the textbooks show it, I'm like you, I'm thinking this is just, this pyramid but not
Yeah,
as
yeah,
tall as
yeah.
me or you. Definitely.
That's just the blocks.
Yeah,
Just the
one
blocks.
one single block.
Single
So
One
it's hard.
single
It's
block.
hard to see how you even slide that type block. Let alone stacking them up to the. I mean, that's like I said. That's
Amazing.
part of what I think why it's just a wonder because the level of mathematics it probably take to have
do that.
simple what would be considered simple tools to be able to help with that.
And then the heavy moving equipment that we see downtown Birmingham with those buildings, they couldn't do nothing over there. That wouldn't even work. Don't even bring it over there. Don't even, it wouldn't work. So it had to be a high
Wow.
science and mathematical, mechanical objects to move objects or maybe levity, something that was beyond the American and world knowledge today, the technology. As I mentioned last week on the show, that those pyramids were just the tombs of the God, of the Father, the Son, and the grandson. They were the great people, so they used those to bury their great leaders at the time. But the civilizations were buried under the sand.
Wow.
So we can't imagine how they built the tomb. What did the civilization look like? Like the most honorable Elijah Muhammad said, we buried our civilizations in the sand when we knew a new ruler was coming and we did not want him to draw from our knowledge. So we buried it. And at a certain
That's-
time, it could be brought back up. But that's who we are.
Wow.
So don't you know the young people in the community that don't know that? These young black boys and girls, when they start finding out who they really are, you think them knowing that we had a black president was one thing. But when we know, when they find out about those pyramids and the great builders of civilizations are their ancestors, You know, even Benjamin Banneker, he had the design of the White House in his mind. They lost the physical copy, but he had it memorized in his mind. Benjamin Banneker.
Wow.
So that's the kind of mind that we have. I'd like to ask one question. I don't usually do this, but I know Brother Tamar mentioned the pyramids, you know, and that pineapple. P&P.
There you go.
That's probably popular last year, the P&P loan with it. But the slave, I like to say the captive, the dungeons of the male and female.
Yeah.
What was that like to be inside where they had our ancestors captured and held till they brought them over here?
You know, it puts a lot of things in perspective. You know, I think even more so, you know, in addition to just actually seeing the, you know, physical, I mean, I'm sure one of many different slave dungeons or kind of port sites where they, you know, right into the middle passages. I guess in tandem with that is kind of when we went to, you know, one of the last bath sites when we were, you know, preparing, you know, the captives to walk a very long distance, because I mean, they literally was showing, I think the video touches on it a little bit, you know, it doesn't show how far we drove out, but we literally had to make a drive out to where that destination was. And they were, you know, say they were walking on feet. And I'm imagining in shackles, you know, a long distance just to get to that port site. So, I mean, I think putting that together and knowing that, you know, I mean, I'm sure you read or hear about how, you know, the struggles or the conditions in the middle passage, just, you know, how long you would be in the ship, you know, and just going to a new land and actually surviving all of that. It puts it in perspective. Like we're the descendants of those people who are able to make that trip, able to make that passage. And, you know, that's kind of deep when you really kind of think about it. You know, hey, we're kind of descendants of people that are resilient, if nothing else, you know, to make it through that and terrible conditions. And, you know, I mean, a lot of our people didn't make it, but, you know, we are descendants of that resilient bunch, just kind of the big impact. So, you know, just kind of seeing a little bit more into those slave dungeons, you know, hearing a lot more about it. I mean, to be honest, I mean, at that time, it was a little bit hard to put it in perspective,
Right.
you know, as an 18-year-old without, you know, being well read on that specific site. You know, it was a lot to kind of take in while trying to get the history lesson as well. But, you know, looking back at it, I think, you know, it makes a lot, you know, bigger impact, and makes you want to kind of look into it a little bit more, you know.
Right. I can imagine.
Yeah, especially having a wife and children now, knowing that the families were separated at that point.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that you really could do. But, you know, do your best to survive that moment, you know. So, yeah.
And you see a lot of that now where they try to separate the man from the woman. So, you know, same trick. So, there are so many more questions that I would want to ask, but I think that we're going to go into this video to give y'all a view of what they actually saw. So, we're going to start the video and leave your comments in the box and let us know what you think and if you have some questions or anything. All right, thank you.
letter. A dash and small one at the middle here. So that was the name of Imhotep. And that was the first time to find a regular person name mentioned upon a pedestal of a statue for a king. Nobody had a permission like that before. And he was the first one, his name mentioned about a royal statue. Okay, so almost like everything like this, he deserves to be a god at the end of ancient civilization. So right now, we can use our mind just to see the object.
Well, the thought is actually a
back to dynasty number 3. And we have here other pyramids for other kings. That one is a damaged and broken one. While the other one on the left hand side, can you see the Step Pyramid? Step Pyramid is considered the oldest pyramid all over Egypt and all over the world. Dates back to more than 4,500 years ago. And still on a good condition. Yeah. No, not stone. Actually, I know. Actually, sandstone never damaged the pyramid, but it is the element of fire. After 4,000 years, you can find some buildings left. Just the material which attached between block of stone. It's not active anymore.
My question is, see how the bridges are filled with sand?
Oh, yes.
Is that from the storm,
Yes.
the wind?
Yes, that's right. But we don't have a lot of stone here, by the way. But of course, the reason to find the sand between levels or steps is that reason. Yeah, sure. So, we're getting down right now.
Time is in the evening, so it's going to take us a little extra longer to get to Cape Coast in this kind of rain. But they have a rainy season, and the rainy season is what makes it a tropical area. This road is going to take us into the road that goes straight to Cape Coast. But all of the people going in that direction are going into Accra, going to work into the city. Welcome home.
Oh, you do?
All right.
Still welcome. All right.
Good to see you.
So how's the nation moving?
Moving fine.
Good.
Fine.
Wow.
So you with this group here?
Yes. Learning group.
Is that right? That it was dark. There was no electric lights. The second thing is that they captured this area. This is a Fonte area. National Geographic did an excellent piece about this area and even some of the names. You'll find names here like Hayfoot, Austin, some of the other names, Quasi. Langston, like his name. That's because the people here, when the English came in particular, because the English were the strongest in the slave trade, so many of the British, as when they first came, didn't bring their women, so they had the black women here, and they had children, and the children ended up with these English names, even though they were Fontes in Africa. And when we go outside, we'll talk about Philip Kweku, and we'll go over that history. But the point about this dungeon, and I'm just going to repeat what my brother said, they had listeners. Now remember, the tribes that came from the interior spoke different languages. And so it was hard for them to communicate. And when I first came here, the guides who were doing the tour of the slave dungeon, being that very few black people came here, a lot of British, a lot of people from Holland, mainly the tourists that came to look at this were Europeans. Very few black people. As a matter of fact, most of the Ghanaians had never been in here.
The channel on the floor, so that the drainage or their feces and urine, when it rains, depending on the direction of the wind, water came in through these holes. This was meant to wash the floor. But the whole place got covered with filth. And many of them got sick and died here. And the excavation here revealed bones, shackles, branded instruments, and some roofs. Some part of the bed was...
Sometimes the chief doesn't talk directly to you, so I'm going to act as Quake's linguist on this. Before you're standing on the floor, that you see the bricks, they excavated this down to this floor. Before that, they couldn't even see none of this drain or anything. And there was an accumulation of the filth, the accumulation of the bones of people who died in here. They just left their bodies in here to rot. And it built up. And then they dug down, and that's when they found the drain, and they found shackles and other things right in here. But it was, and the ones that came, when we had a large group here, they reenacted with the chains and lined them up. They were tackled in here, the rebellious ones. And it was a sort of a punishment for them.
We believe in the Supreme Being as all people, but we believe in worshiping Him through natural phenomena. So trees, mountains, rivers, stones, and leaves have spirits behind them. And through these spirits we communicate to the Supreme Being, because He is considered too pious to be approached directly by our sinful men. And indeed, in our traditional set of us, one cannot approach an elderly person or a chief directly. You have to go through a language. Therefore, these gods serve as language between man and God. There are many of them.
Don't care which is more for not having. That's what I would do. Give that away a woman that I want. I'm sure we should have one. The point I also remember that I want. What would be free by? What was it you call? That makes sure that I have a one. Go down to him. And should we should have one to go to one.
So that was a libation. Libation is a form of prayer. And He prayed to welcome you, to wish you success in all your endeavors, and safe journey back to where you came from, with long life and prosperity.
With the adoration and honor, we thank you for the lives of our brothers, sisters, our mothers, our fathers, our grandfathers, our grandmothers, and our great-great-grandfathers. Father, we thank you, O God, Father, even for the blood that they shed for us. We thank you, Father, for the strength given to them to endure even to the last end. Father, we ask that may their souls rest in perfect peace. Amen. Amen. Thank you very much.
They sent 3 young men to England to learn how to read and write and actually become Christian missionaries. And I'm going to let Kwesi tell you the first part, and if he doesn't cover it, I'll cover the second part, okay? Go ahead.
Well, since you are sharing it, then you have the...
Yeah, let me say that. Let me go ahead. You go ahead, Kwesi. Yeah.
Now, the name is Reverend Philip Kweku. Reverend Philip Kweku. And as I'm sure he wants me to say, the name Kweku is an anglicized name of a name Kweku. He was born on Wednesday. So the name Kweku was anglicized, as happened to most of our names. Kwesi, for instance, we have anglicized to Kwesin. And as my name Blankson is, One anglicized from Kuntu, meaning blanket. So son of a blanket became Blankson. And this spread along the coast, not only in the Fanti or Cape Coast, but from Elmina through to Accra, you find anglicized African names. Therefore, Philip Kweku was sent to England around 1764, came back in 1760 as a missionary, a catechist, and a school teacher, opened a lot of schools along the coast. And also through it
was the Englishmen, they soften it up, they say had relationship, but raped many of the black women and had the women as their mistress, and they had children. And those children were the first ones that his job was to educate those children, and so his first job was to do that. Now it grew, and it went outside of the castle, but that's where it started. And there were many of the children who were born of these relationships that the fathers fathered them, didn't want them to go back into that society, but wanted to make them Christians, and that was his first responsibility. So I don't want you to get confused that these good rulers of this slave dungeon felt that this was a good man and we're going to send him away, make him a good Christian, and he'll come back and teach Christianity all throughout Elmina and Cape Coast. Their first thing was, we need him to help us with these children and be a father. Okay, I just wanted to put
and of course, most of the children didn't know their fathers.
That's correct.
They were merchants who had been here trading for 3 months. They go out on sea, not even knowing that they had impregnated a poor woman here, or left a child behind. So it was the decision of the management to cater for such children without getting Europe to know. Later on, when we go into the dungeon, we'll talk more about it.
We're gonna step out that door on the other side.
Those who were sick and considered weak, that they would not be able to make the journey, were also thrown in. The dead followed up. So there were sharks following the ships who were feeding on them. And when there was a food shortage on board the ships, the sharks were trapped to feed the captives on the ships. Do you understand that? And if you came here with your husband or your wife, you slept apart. In the night, the soldier came for your wife. If she becomes pregnant and found here, she's safe. She's taken out and brought back after delivery. But if she was found pregnant on the ship,
woman who has been has also broken her chain. Meaning not only men were captured, but men as well, women as well, and even children of 10. But there was a philosopher, Ghanaian philosopher, who was called Dr. Koji Agri. Dr. Koji Agri. He made a profound statement that when you educate a man, you educate an individual. But when you educate a woman, you educate the whole nation. Simply because the women are in the houses with their kids. The men go out, find something for the family to eat, or how to cater for the family. But the women, in those days, women were always in the house, catering for the children. So they educate the children more than the men. That's why he said when you educate a man, you educate an individual, but when you educate a woman, you educate the whole nation. Right. We are very happy. It is rather unfortunate that your group, the men outnumber the women. Yes, but when you take statistics of the visitations at this site, the women outnumber, or the women always outnumber the men. And we are very happy with it, because the women go back and then they tell stories, they propagate the information to the children. So this time, women have also been emancipated. They have gained their freedom. They are no more in slavery. They are also breaking their chains. Right, from here, you soon reach the river where our people had their last bath before the departure. When you read that place, I'll tell you more about what actually took place at Asimaso, at the market center. I hope I'm clear. When I say I go, give me your attention. When I also respond, I mean, it means we are ready to receive the message, so I should go on. So once again, I go. I say amen. I go. Amen. Before we do the interpretation at this point, let's bow down our heads and observe a minute silence in the memory of all our people who died in the race. From outside Pressing Ghana to Salaga, and then from Salaga to Asin Mountain, and then from Asin Mountain to the dungeons in the castles, and then all the three died on the high seas. Let's observe a minute silence in their memory. You are once again welcome to Asin Mountain, which was the greatest slave market during the time of the transatlantic slave trade in Ghana. But our people were captured. Some of them were raided. Some of them were caught through ethnic wars. Outside Pressing Ghana, beyond Pressing Ghana, Burkina Faso and other places, and we were put in chains and shackles to Salaga market. There existed two major slave markets. This was a tribute to this river. So they built them this river called Ndonkusu. That's the name of the river. You see, sometimes we get names from events. So our people, they were not slaves, they were captives that time. We called them captives. They were captives. So before, in fact, they only watched them in batches. They never watched all of them at a go. That time, there was a very big tree standing over here. The tree had fallen and it's dead and had decomposed in the side. So there was a very big tree over here, very big tree with thorns. And those who were awaiting washing had to be chained to it. And the owners selected a few of them and then bathed them in batches. So they were dragged to this point, this area, to the sea, to bathe. In fact, our people never used this stream for any domestic activity because they are sacred river. Our people suffered, our people died over here. So you preserve this stream as a sacred river. You don't use it for any human activity. So our people, they are continuous walking down from this place to never develop the garden you are seeing over here.
Okay, let me hold up one focus. Right. I just want to, for the young children, they may not be able to pick up your Ghanaian accent.
Yeah.
I just want to repeat what he said for clarity. Salaga in the north is where they brought the captives down. They were not called slaves because a slave is made into a slave. They're captives. They're really free men. So they brought them down, and then before the middlemen, when he said the middlemen, those are the people on the coast, the Fantis, who engaged in getting them from the people from the interior, but they cleaned them here. And then they would go and sell them to the trades, the slave traders who were there in boats. And what he said also, if you didn't hear, that the local people don't use this for anything now because they were considered sacrilegious. Because in many areas they use the rivers to wash clothes or they'd come down to it. But this is the place where they came And he said there was a big tree here, and they would chain them to the tree, and they would take them down in groups, and then wash their bodies to prepare them for the onward walk. Now, where you came from yesterday, Cape Coast and Almena, those were the slave dungeons that were closest to here. So imagine how long it took us to get here driving. They walked them all the way there before they put them into those dungeons that you saw yesterday. Okay, it's a very important part that he made here, because many of the people who were brought from the northern, Salaga is in what
Lovely part of the country.
What region?
Upper West.
Upper West. Upper West. This is the northern part of the country. And they were brought here, and many of the people, the local people, the village here, the people of Fantis here.
Yes. So we are same people. We are Asin people.
Asin. Okay. And
the Fantis are
on the coast.
Yes.
Okay. And when they brought the people down from the north, and many of the traders had women in the group. Some of the local people here saw the women and brought them from the trader or worked out a deal and kept them instead of shipping them to the coast. So many of the people married into families right here. Yeah. Okay, is that clear?
Yeah,
okay.
Clear,
okay. Clear. It's very important that you understand that the assimilation from the people from different parts who came here were on their way to the slave dungeons and then into ships to America. By circumstances, many of them ended up remaining here.
Yeah.
The British government first banned the Atlanta slave trade, meaning that it was illegal for ships to leave African coast with slaves on board. But it didn't mean that they banned slavery.
No.
Slavery was not banned by the British until 1833. But in 1807, they stopped the movement of ships. The British Navy could seize the ship, look in it, and if there were slaves in the ship, the British Navy could seize the ship and either take the captives back to the shore. And when we're talking in our class, I'll tell you about people who were in England that were once slaves, and when they freed them, they got a ship to ship them back to Sierra Leone. Okay, the British enacted a law. And the law was that their ships could see ships on the sea and stop them and search them. But even today, the same things happen right now with migrants from Africa trying to reach Europe. They pay ship people to take them, especially off the coast of northern Africa, countries like Morocco, Tunisia, Libya, and all of that. So people actually leave Ghana, cross through Burkina Faso, through Nigeria. These are the countries. If I had a map here, I could show you. And they would go into Libya or Algeria. Then they would pay captains to take them. Or they would go to Guinea-Bissau and go over to Cape Verde. But they would pay people.
And then Gambia.
And they would pay people. And then if the patrol boats catch them or trailing them, they would make the people jump overboard.
Yes.
Ghana has a famous case about this during the 90s, and they would make them jump overboard. So during the time of slavery, in order to charge the captain, they would have to catch him with the slave. So when he saw ships coming after him, he'd make the slaves, they would throw them all overboard and kill them. And then when the ship stopped, they said, we have nothing. Yeah. But then they enacted, according to Mr. Kofi, they enacted another convention that if they found evidence on the ship that there were slaves there, such as shackles and other things, they could still charge the captain. And what Kofi is saying, Mr. Danso, right, is saying is that that this was a relative of the people who left here, and they performed the ritual of that relative because this is the place that they came from, and they ended up in Jamaica. And when we talk about the slave trade, the winds carried the ships. Most of the ships went to Jamaica. And the same ritual that he described here is what happened to us. They would take them off the ships, they would wash them up and clean them up, and the ones that looked the best they would send to North America because they got the biggest price. Those that were sick, had missing teeth or broken bones from the long journey, they would leave them in Jamaica and sell them for a lesser price. But those that went to North America got a bigger price because they were cleaned up and they were still healthy and strong. And I'm going to repeat what we talked about in the slave dungeon. What makes you unique is that you are a survivor of all of that. And this is why we must be principled about what we do with our lives. In my years in Ghana, I wonder why they didn't have a big prison population like we have in America. And the reason for that is because of family tradition. If I would go to prison, then my whole village would be ashamed of me and hurt, and I would hurt my family. Where in America, we don't have this kind of feel for family. But in Africa, family is important. So you never do nothing that would hurt your family or your village. And in the village, many people are related, so you have to be principled about how you handle your life.
Because, you see, the white men, the Europeans came to sell out ethnic wars. So when he fought, and then the captives, most of them were sold to slavery. You see, so when we were given a mission to fight so that you have more services to serve you under you, and at the end of every month, you have to pay tribute. So some of the chiefs are very happy with it.
Hey, Ghana, okay, the Arabs engaged in trading mainly in North Africa. The Arabs engaged in slave trade in East Africa, but in the West Africa, near the coast here, the Arabs were never in here engaging in the slave trade. So I want to know why, because see, there's an attempt now by the Western world, being that there's an African Union, where Africans unite, to separate North Africa from Sub-Saharan Africa. And they're doing it through, these are Arabs, we're black Africans. And they're trying to divide Africa along that. So when I saw that on the wall, that is a distortion of history.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned even earlier, in the Gambia, even though they speak Mandinka and Jolo, they wrote their language in Arabic characters because they didn't have the Western characters. And they, even though they spoke it, the sound was written in Arabic. So the Arabs did not come into Ghana and participate in the slave trade. There's no history of that. But see, when when these students come, their focus is on West Africa. Okay. Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria. And when they see that, it gives a distorted picture. Right. And because I was just telling my brother that in East Africa, where the Arabs came from Oman and Yemen down the coast of East Africa, and the Saharan trade in countries like Niger and Mali, the northern part, even the Arabs that live in that northern part are not white Arabs. They're Arabs that would be the color of, where's Manuel? Manuel left. Or maybe her color, or his color, or lighter. They would be the Arabs. But when you draw a picture on the wall of these white Arabs in white dress, and you're dealing and you're talking about West Africa, it distorts the picture of history. Okay. And this also further divides, I'm a Muslim, it further divides Muslims from our brothers who are Christians in their mind. Because I've heard these stories in America, and I know for a fact that these stories are distortion. The tribal wars, as one of the ladies in the slave dungeon yesterday from Austria was in our group, and she asked, how did the slaves get here? Her real question was, did other Africans engage in the slave trade? Of course they did, but they never knew what would happen to these slaves, because in wars we capture people. And when we capture people in wars, we hold them, and we may bargain them off to other people and so forth, but they had no idea of what we would suffer. So I'm worried about this distortion of history that is not.
That was so powerful.
Yes. yes
Now I
yes.
definitely want to go to Africa. Okay, I'm definitely I have to go to Africa. That is on my bucket list officially. So you guys saw what I saw. Tell me what you think. Are y'all wanting to go to Africa too? Because I am. So please leave your comments about what you thought about the video. And Brother Tracy, is there anything else you would like to share?
Yeah, I mean, just thank you to A Sip of Conversation with April, even though Lisa ain't here today, but kudos to you, Lisa. But thank you all so much for allowing us to come back on, especially having Brother Tamark here today. It's been a blessing beyond words. A lot of people say the children, why we do what we do, and sometimes that may not be the case. But it's proven today that we're trying to keep to our word with Supreme Leadership Youth Academy as well as other organizations. So if anybody want to know more about the upcoming curriculum of Project Youth to Africa, you can just give us a call at 205-223-0869. That's 205-223-0869.
All right. Thank y'all again for joining us. And Tamark, maybe you can come back on the show and talk about some physical therapy.
All right, we'll see what we can do.
Okay.
But I definitely appreciate you having us.
Okay, thank y'all for coming.
All right.
Thank y'all for joining the Sip of Conversation. See you next week.